Hey, Nelson George here. It is March 12th, 2025, which makes this the 32nd anniversary of the release of this film, CB4. I was a co-writer and a producer of CB4, and a film that's made its mark in sort of pop culture in a lot of ways. The idea of the studio gangster, the person who isn't really a gangster but raps about gangster shit, um, kind of comes out of CB4 on some level. Um, the track "I'm Black Y'all," which gets played every Black History Month, with Alan Payne on camera. Daddy-O, Sonic's voice, rapping "I'm Black Y'all" was something that came out of CB4. I'm very proud of it. It has continued in the culture. Uh, and there's a bunch of other really funny stuff in the movie that has had a life of its own. And obviously, it was a big breakthrough for Chris Rock, whose idea it was, as well as for me. I'd already written one screenplay for Strictly Business, and this was my second one, so it was really a huge moment in my career as well. So I want to tell a few CB4 stories. First, how the thing started. December 12th, 1989, Chris Rock comes to my house for a meeting at noon. A woman named Jocelyn Cooper, who young record executive at the time, later on very well known for, she ran Afropunk for many, many years, and the great festival they had. She connects us. She tells, I've met Chris a few times, but we're never friends. I really don't know him well. He comes over. I was living in Fort Greene at the time, and he basically says, I want to do Rap Spinal Tap, which I think is a great idea. Those who don't know, Spinal Tap is a really funny movie, a parody of heavy metal culture. And the idea of doing something like that with hip hop or rap was a great idea to me. The problem was, at that point, he hadn't developed it very much. And one thing I really learned as a writer was that people pitch you ideas not for them to write, but trying to get you to write it and them to take the credit. So I said, okay, Chris, thank you. Great idea. I'll tell you what. And I gave him a bunch of questions like, what is the name of the group? Names of some of the artists, characters, maybe even songs. And I thought, really, quite honestly, I'd gotten rid of them. But it was in a day or two he came back. Chris is now he's in his early 20s, so he's been in I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, but he hasn't broken through yet as a stand-up. So he comes back. He's got Cell Block 4, which was the real name. We call it CB4. He had the name of most of the characters, Dead Mike and some others. And he had a lot of lyrics for a parody of Straight Outta Compton, which became eventually Straight Outta Low Cash. So he began coming over to my place, and we began watching movies. We watched Kentucky Fried Movie, very funny parody movie directed by John Landis' first feature. We watched Airplane, and particularly we watched Ruddles, which was, if you can find it online, it was a parody of the Beatles, which was sort of SNL meets Monty Python. So there's so many great comedy people in it. So we really began working with that idea that began developing over time. And so that was into 1990. So two things happened in 1990. I connect with a guy named Sean Daniel, who had a production deal, Alphaville, at Universal. He had previously been head of production at Universal. And he had worked on a couple of films that were really crucial. He'd worked on Animal House, and he'd been very involved in the making of the Blues Brothers with John Landis and Belushi and Aykroyd. So he liked broad comedy. He understood, he was a big music fan. It turned out that he had been an intern for Robert Christgau, my main editor at The Village Voice, for years, so we had that connection. So he came on board, as a producer. And then I got a phone call out of the blue that same year, more or less, from a guy, Brian Grazier. And Brian Grazier was still is co-owner of Imagine Pictures, along with Ron Howard, big production company, also connected to Universal. So now we had two big dogs, to help us figure this thing out. Now, Chris and I at that point, we didn't even have computers. Neither one of us did. My girlfriend at the time, Pan Lewis, we would write drafts, type them up, or handwrite them, and then she found an Apple store, rental store in the city. We would go there and she'd type it up and print out copies of our script. This is how long ago it was. In fact, there was a guy, what's his name? We lost his name, but Eugene, I think his name was, who was like one of the top script transcribers in New York. So most, this is 89, 90. Everyone still doesn't have, a personal computer yet. So he had a business where he typed up raw notes and made them into script format and put this really cool little binder around them. So we were using him after we used Pam. So we were really trying to figure it out. Two things happened also. The 91, a film I worked on, Strictly Business, gets made by Warner Brothers. So I'm a legitimate screenwriter now. Chris gets in New Jack City, and he's Pookie, and that really helps his profile. Obviously, Pookie's kind of a legendary character. And then the timeline's kind of foggy a bit, but somewhere in there, Chris gets on Saturday Night Live. So now, since we met in 89, both of our careers in terms of this motion picture game has evolved, and I think we're more credible. We have more likely people will give us money to make the movie. So one of the most memorable events is that the day of the Rodney King, the Rodney King verdict, we have a meeting set up the next day in New York, in LA. And the reports of some, disturbances or happened that night, but we have an early morning flight. And we're like, yo, let's go. I mean, there'll be some little things, people are upset, but, we'll still have our meetings. Well, we landed LAX in that day in 1992. And literally, it's chaos in LA. And normally we were staying at the Mondrian Hotel, which was on the corner of Sunset, at like 2 blocks from La Cienega. And usually when you went there, you'd go right up La Cienega and make a right onto Sunset to go to the Mondrian. Not today. Literally, they were rioting at the Beverly Center. So we took Robertson and came around. And then I would never forget this. I sat on the balcony, or like by the pool, at the Mondrian, had a cranberry juice. And I sat there the next day counting fires. There was literally a fire I counted at one point 15 different little flames from where I was sitting at the Mondrian. And almost all of them were on the east side to like La Cienega, maybe. There was very little on the west side going toward like Beverly Hills or going toward even Culver City. Excuse me. That night, there was nothing going on in the city. LA was shut down. So Chris and I went and sat outside, and in the front of the Mondrian, there's a little driveway area. So we kind of hung out by this gate. And a LAPD car rolled up on us. And, what are we doing here? 2 black guys on Sunset Boulevard in the middle of a riot. Luckily, the people at the hotel vouched for us that we were guests. But it was tense like that. So much happened during that time, but we basically were kind of stuck at the Mondrian for 3 or 4 days. I remember we went to an event, actually, at Warner Brothers. They had some kind of, keep the peace event. And I remember running into and talking to Eazy-E, and I think he was with Ren. And, I think I'd met Eazy. I'd met Eazy a couple times before that. And I had to say to him, like, yo, you guys predicted this stuff happening. I never forget that. It was a crazy meeting. And then actually after that, Chris and I drove down Olympic. We drove down one of the main drags where we knew they had been riding. So we drove from basically Burbank through Hollywood, all the way out to South Central, basically, what was then called South Central. And we went along Western, and we saw all of the Korean businesses that had been torn up, and it was surreal. You were kind of in a war zone. And the irony is that once we got the movie made, we actually shot a lot of CB4 on Adams Boulevard, which was near where a lot of stuff had happened. So we actually did shoot a lot of the movie. What became Low Cash in the movie was actually shot near some of the areas that some of the damage had been done. Well, let me skip back. So what's the next? So there's a few other things then. So I once the movie. While the development, basically, I lived at the Mondrian Hotel more or less from all of '92, much of '91. I was at the Mondrian. I lived in Mondrian almost all of '92 as a sort of a. So at the Mondrian was where we did a lot of the development work on the script. A lot of funny things, but I think the most memorable part of it is that at one point Ben Stiller was going to direct CB4. So Ben Stiller was in the meetings, Chris and I, and then we got hooked up with a guy named Robert Locash, who was part of the Zucker Brothers team, and he worked on Airplane and some of the other movies. So you had Ben Stiller, who had his style of comedy. You had Chris Rock, his style of comedy. You had Robert Locash, who had a very different style of comedy. And at some point during the meetings, we figured out that Locash, Robert's name, would become the town's name. So that's how Seattle Locash happened, was Robert Locash, was the real guy. Ben dropped out because he got a job starting the Ben Stiller Show, which really began his rise as a star. And we tried to figure out who the next director would be, and we ended up with Tamra Davis. Tamra was really a great choice. She'd worked on a comedic music video with Chris called Mama's Got a Big Head, and that she shot that. But she also she shot Tone Loc's Wild Thing video, DLC's first videos, Young MC. So she was steeped in sort of the LA hip hop culture. And she also actually was dating a friend of ours. He was dating Mike Diamond of the Beastie Boys. So she checked a lot of boxes. What happened? So I remember this night, I'm staying at the Mondrian. There's a meeting being held at a screening in LA where Grazier's going to be there, Sean Daniel's going to be there, and a guy named Tom Pollock, who ran Universal, was going to be there. And they were going to talk about CB4. So we were nervous. I mean, we drove out to the pier in Santa Monica and played like air hockey games and was just killing time because we were, nervous. And then, by the time we got back to the hotel, they greenlit the movie. So that's and that's actually not long. In that it's like spring of '92, not long after the riots, actually. So we all the movie was shot really in the shadow of that, even though it was a comedy. It definitely affected the mood, I guess. Now we had to make these records, and two good friends really crucial. Bill Stephanie, who he was part of Public Enemy. He was a president at Def Jam at one point. Had his own company, Stepson Music, and we brought him on as music supervisor. And also, he was our neighbor in Fort Greene, and he connected us with Daddy-O of Stetsasonic. And Daddy-O is a key piece of the story because he produced almost all of the CB4 parody tracks. He produced Straight Outta Low Cash and some of the other tracks, and he's the voice of Al Payne. So whenever Al Payne raps, that's Daddy-O. And he found a California MC, High C, and High C became the voice of Chris's character, Albert Brown. So it was really fun. We had a lot of fun making those tracks, uh, and coming up with crazy lyrics. Um, when after we shot the body of the film, I did a lot of. We wanted to put celebrities in it who sort of co-signed the reality of CB4, and so we had a production office in Culver City, and we had everybody from the Butthole Surfers to the Whispers, who didn't. Neither one of them. I think the Butthole Surfers made the final cut. Uh, Shaquille O'Neal came through. Ice-T came through. But again, my favorite memory is Eazy-E. Easy, like he got it totally. He saw the picture of Chris and he knew that we were making fun of him at some level. But he got it. And he actually, if you watch the film and see him in it, he actually refers to the Jerry curl. So he was great. I mean, whatever you say about Easy or whatever, he had a completely fun sense of humor, and he totally got it. The other person I want to shout out is who's departed is Charlie Murphy. Charlie was just so funny. He came in for his audition, right? So he auditioned for the gangster, Gusto. He came in like a canary yellow suit with some crazy shades on, and he brought 2 or 3 bodyguards / guys with him. And in the middle of the audition, he pulls out a nickel-plated gun. Whoa! And then he walked out, and from where we were, our production office, we work on the 2nd floor, so we could see the parking lot. And Charlie walked out of there, flanked by his guys. It's like, yo, this is Gusto. He's our man. And, before he did the Chappelle Show and became famous for his stories, he told us story after story. Lunchtime with Charlie Murphy is one of the best things in the world. A lot of the stories that became famous on the Chappelle Show, he told us over lunch, and some other ones that never have come out. Chris and I kept talking about we need to do a comedy record with Charlie. That was our biggest mistake. We could have had all those stories earlier on, but there was so much else going on, we didn't get it done. A few little items I wanted to point out. I mean, I still have 2 copies of a CB4 cassette. One is actually unopened. And it's crazy to look at this because, we're in an era of digital everything. But to have the credits, to have something tactile like this, all of the different credits. There's the great Candy Alexander, who's fantastic as Sissy. There's Charlie. Willard Pugh, who was in Color Purple. So I just have these keepsakes. I have something else I want to show. So for that year, I kept a little picture book of the, you take Polaroids on a movie set to sort of, for continuity. I scooped up a lot of them and then made a little booklet. And this is, what we got here? Oh, I lost that one. Okay, my 35th birthday was on the set of CB4 in Santa Monica. This is me with High C, who did the voice of Albert Brown rapping. CB4 in effect, Deezer D, Al Payne, and Chris Rock. Those were the sessions for publicity. Actually, those were shot by the great Anthony Barboza. Chris Rock, Charlie Murphy. There's Gusto. This is great. Let's see, a couple of more ones. The great Phil Hartman, who played our reactionary conservative villain, kind of. Let me see. Oh, the great Rachel True, Bohemian Princess, played a girlfriend, the girl next door. Stoney Jackson as Wacky D, who was our parody of MC Hammer. The great Art Evans, who just passed end of last year. He played Chris Rock's father. This is Ice-T on the day doing his early Ice-T as an actor, actually doing his talk about CB4. Shaquille O'Neal doing his thing, one of his first on-camera things. A couple more cool things in here. Let me see, anything else? Oh, the Tennyson twins, two beautiful young ladies who I think they posed for Playboy. They came in and did some stuff. Yeah, so this was like a keepsake that I've had since 1992 of the film. And there's a bunch of other stuff I have lying around. There's some 12 inches, and there's actually those of you who get Blu-ray. There's actually a Blu-ray. It only came out in 2021, actually. I did an interview with it. I think Tamara did an interview. So CB4, hugely important part of my life. A great part of hip-hop culture. People have talked to us many times over the years about doing an updated version of CB4, but hip hop has gone in so many directions and is so crazy. And it's some of the stuff that we did, like "Sweat on My Balls," right? That's a song that was done, which pretty edgy in 1992. "Sweat on My Balls" is not edgy in 2025. It's the nastiness and the that's commonplace. So, it was very hard right now to parody something that's almost a parody of itself in a lot of ways. Anyway, those are my CB4 stories. 32 years ago it came out. If you have a chance and you want to hang out and you have some time to kill, CB4 is still a funny day, a funny night, funny songs, great performances. And part of the tapestry of hip hop culture.